This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUReview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUReview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 46 of the DCAU Review. I'm your host Cal, and with me, as he always is, the DCAU Review Twitter guru. Man, it's a mouthful every time you say it.
You came up with it. I don't know why you're complaining.
Waiting on that monogram name tag just so I can read right off of it. You know, it's Liam. Liam, welcome to episode 46 of the DCAU Review.
Yeah, we got another big one here. As our last week before we get to review the new Justice League vs. Fatal 5.
So excited.
Can you feel it? Can you feel the anticipation in the air?
I can.
And for our last Season 1 Justice League review for the time being, we thought we would go with another one of our favorites, one of the big ones from Season 1, The Savage Time, a big 3-part epic World War II story.
Man, it is a tremendous episode. I have good memories about this one. I remember we were in a second-hand toy store one time called Classic Plastic Toys in Reisterstown, and he was playing it on TV in there, and that was the first time that we had seen, or at least the first time I think we had seen either the first part, because I think we had the second or third part, or both.
I think we had 2 and 3
but we had never seen the first part.
Yes, I think that's
so
right.
I think he was showing the first part. It was the first time we had seen that, but that's what my brain goes to when I think about these episodes. But it is a fascinating sort of alternate timeline storyline involving our heroes, the Justice League, in which they are transported to a alternate dimension, sort of. It actually turns out to be an altered past due to the villain Vandal Savage influencing his past former self, affecting the future. If you followed that, that's great. The future is altered due to the fact that World War II, the outcome has changed due to Vandal Savage's meddling. He has sent himself futuristic technology from the future back to the past to help him take over the German Nazis and help them win World War II.
Yeah.
Which is a tale as old as time, as you like to say.
Telling the same old stories, these superhero cartoons.
Yeah, for real. I absolutely love that episode. Let's start, as we always do, with plot, Liam. We went over the basic plot here as an overview, but it really gets into some deep dives into the DC universe here.
Yeah.
We get some of the Golden Age, Silver Age, I guess, superheroes that were introduced in the 40s and 50s. You get Sergeant Rock and Easy Company. You get Steve Trevor of Wonder Woman fame, who's probably never been more famous than he is right now. His portrayal from Chris Pine in the Wonder Woman movie in 2017. We have, let's see, who else do we have in this episode?
We have the Blackhawks, which are memorable specifically for one reason, which we'll get into a little bit later. But,
absolutely.
They have a nice, fun cameo. We even get little cameos from the Unknown Soldier. And so basically, this was definitely a chance for the creators of the show. And I remember if you listen to the commentary they did on the Justice League Season 1 DVD, this was a real big chance for them to just nerd out and use all these characters, all these World War II era characters that they really would never ever have another chance to use.
Yeah.
They do some time travel episodes later on, but they don't go back to this era. So
yeah,
this was really kind of felt like this was their one shot, and they were going to just jam everybody in there, but it doesn't feel overstuffed at any point to me.
No, I concur with that. It does. They do a great job of separating the heroes. I think they learned from the first couple episodes where you have such a large contingency. You have 6 of the 7 in this. Well, you have all 7 in part 1, but the main story is focused on 6 of the 7. So they do a good job of splitting them up, separating their stories so that they can kind of be fleshed out on their own. Martian Manhunter even disappears for quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So you really have five of the heroes, and then they split John Stewart off into his own sort of storyline with Easy Company. But I think they do a good job of balancing all of that. Your story is is, as we said, Vandal Savage sends himself some futuristic technology in an attempt to win World War II, in an attempt to take over the world, essentially. So, it's certainly a fascinating concept, and there are ways that they could have done this differently, I think, but I enjoyed the way that they did it, the fact that it's a throwback to the World War II era, and the fact they were able to incorporate so many of the DC superheroes from that time frame.
Yeah.
I have a strong feeling about this plot. What about before I give my score, I'll let you talk because I talked a little bit.
Yeah,
here.
and like I said, it's real jam-packed, but I do think overall it's really strong. If you want to nitpick, you can say, yeah, it's the reasoning of why the rest of the Justice League aren't affected is basically just Green Lantern is towing the Javelin back with the rest of the Leaguers minus Batman at the start of the episode. So when the time waves come out, they're sort of protected by Green Lantern's ring in sort of a not really explained way. So you can nitpick a little bit. I went 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really good. The only thing, I wish they had done a little more focus on the Hawkgirl Green Lantern side, because there's a scene near the end of part 1 where she leaves Green Lantern behind because she's taking injured soldiers with her. Green Lantern tells her to leave them behind,
right?
But there's right at the start of part 2, there's this very emotional scene where the Flash is sort of yelling at her about like, how could you leave him behind, and she's eventually sort of goes into this spiel, and she takes Flash over to the sick tent and shows all these wounded soldiers and talks about how this could have been so much worse. But then we don't really get any more of that until the very end of part 3, when she sort of they realize John is in one of the planes with Vandal Savage, and they're able to save him and bring them back with them. But as far as they know, they're never going to see John Stewart again. He might be dead for all they know.
Yeah, there isn't much time for them to react
and
to
they
that.
So I felt like that could have been focused on a little bit more. Again, I'm nitpicking there. It's not bad in any way, and the dialogue especially, and we'll get into that in voice acting, the back and forth between the Flash and Hawkgirl is very good in that regard. I just wish it could have been focused on a bit more. But still really strong, 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's fair. I think as far as plot is concerned, the way that they go and sort of show you an altered future with the different story of Batman. He tells the story how his parents were killed by the Nazis instead of being murdered in an alley, but he still leads this resistance against Vandal Savage and his regime.
Yeah.
And then the heroes go back in time, and I think the plot is just absolutely fantastic. It's a little bit, if you wanted to get nitpicky, I think you could pick on the end just a little bit, because it's sort of wrapped up in a very neat and orderly fashion, and they don't really explain how the heroes get back to the present reality. They don't explain how Green Lantern's ring gets recharged.
Yeah.
They don't explain a lot of that stuff. So there's a couple things I feel like they left untied at the end, but overall I think that's nitpicking. I'm going to go with a perfect 10 out of 10 for the plot.
There we go.
I think it's fantastic. I love the plot of this episode. I got super excited looking into it, and when we realized we were going to review it. So I'm fully on board with the plot for this. All right, let's move on to animation, Liam. Thoughts, early first impressions? It's
Really breathtaking, some of the stuff they did, especially some of the air battles in part 1 and in part 3. It's almost like they're following the characters around. There aren't a lot of cuts. It's almost like where you see that in a live action movie where it's like all one shot, where they'll follow Hawkgirl and then they'll just sort of pan a little bit over to Superman fighting something, and then pan up to Martian Manhunter, and then pan over to Wonder Woman. But it all feels like one shot. All feels very 3-dimensional. It's really, really well done. The battle scenes I think are really breathtaking. Some of the best stuff I think we've seen on the shows that we've reviewed up to this point. It's such a big epic scale, because in addition to all of the World War II imagery, the fighter planes, the soldiers, you also have the DC Comics elements of the war wheels and the future tech of these big impressive big jets that they're flying on at the end. There's a lot of stuff that could have looked like wonky or looked like rushed, and it all looks really tremendous. The design is really well done. All of the characters, especially like the Blackhawks design, I think is really tremendous. I like the way their planes look. I like the way their character designs look. Same with Easy Company. They all look different. You have Bulldozer's sort of this big beefy guy. Kind of looks like Bruce Wayne in The Forgotten, honestly. And but they don't. They could have just put sort of 4 generic soldiers next to each other and said, "Hey, we're Easy Company," but they actually did a little bit of a. They made sure it was clear which character was which I appreciated there.
Sure.
So yeah, for all those reasons and much more, I gave visuals 10 out of 10.
Wow, awesome.
There's a lot of little things. There's a tremendous shot where they go inside of the leader of the Blackhawks cockpit as he's firing, and there's shadows on his face, and then his sort of face is illuminated by the light of his machine guns firing. Just so many cool little things that they did in this episode that I really can't remember seeing in another episode anything that's really comparable to it.
Sure, yeah, I agree that the animation is really strong in this episode. I think that there were a couple of things that took me out of it a few times. Some of the drawing looked a little wonky. We talked about how the first season character models are a little bit off. Superman looked a little bit Asian at times, which if they wanted to make Superman Asian, that was their prerogative. But as far as I know, Superman was not Asian. But the way they drew him, he kind of looked Asian with the high cheekbones and the smaller eyes in this episode. A lot of it is at night, which is good because it hides. We always talk about how the setting being at night hides a lot of the deficiencies in the animation. The daylight kind of is the enemy, and there is some daylight, especially at the beginning of the episode. I was confused. They don't really make it clear if Batman's cowl in the alternate future Batman, why he doesn't have eyes. Is it supposed to be like a shield, like it's just dark, like sunglasses, like you can't see through it?
I think so. Just because all of his other soldiers also have like big black goggles on.
It's it's a little bit distracting though, because it's like, where are Batman's eyes? Oh, he doesn't have any. It's kind of weird. The Flash in a couple scenes looks a little off-model, wonky, for lack of a better term. And I think there was one or two things in the last scene or two that didn't quite make sense. There's one scene where they're attacking Vandal Savage's fleet of jet engines that are flying over to the United States to try and invade, and the heroes are attacking it, they're on fire, and then they cut back to the heroes, and then they cut back to the ships, and suddenly they're not on fire anymore. And I don't know if that was an oversight, or if it was supposed to be additional planes, or whatever, but it seemed like there was only 4 or 5 planes at the start, so I don't know how additional planes could have showed up, but it was just a minor mistake. There was also the reuse of a explosion. They have, and if you've ever been nerdy enough to listen to the voiceovers that some of the producers do, the audio commentary, they'll talk to you about reusing certain explosions. There's one that just kind of appears out of nowhere in that last scene. It's a reused explosion. It was kind of, again, nerdy enough for me to be distracted by it. Not nerdy. I mean, if you're not paying attention, you probably don't even notice it. But I did like a lot of the visuals. There's a lot of great stuff in this, but I didn't think it was their best effort, so I gave it a 7 out of 10.
All right, fair enough.
Not enough for the disagreement alarm, because I still think it's strong.
Yes.
But I think they could have done better in certain areas.
Yeah, a couple of little things. I think we talked about this back in Blackest Night, but I really like that when John's ring runs out of power, his eyes turn colors.
Sure.
Like the green leaves his eyes. I always think that's a really cool design choice of theirs. And there's little things at the end, like when Hawkgirl saves John, and she's holding him by their hand, and then she kind of squeezes his hand, which of course, they're heading towards the romance story with those two. And so you got a little bit more follow up of that, which again, I mean, that kind of dips back into plot where you kind of wish there was a little more of the Hawkgirl being guilty over this, this man that she clearly has feelings for.
Right.
That she left him behind. I felt like that could have been more. But again, some of those little flourishes were really nicely done.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about music, Liam. Music in this episode, we noted as we were watching this, in the first scene, There's some music that comes in, and it sounds a little... we talked a little bit about the canned aspect versus the live orchestra. What is almost certainly a keyboard mimicking the sound of live strings and horns.
Yes.
That doesn't quite translate to the same sound of a live orchestra performing that we are used to from Batman the Animated Series, or spoiled with, I guess, maybe from Batman the Animated Series. And I get it, the budget was probably smaller for these episodes, or they didn't put as much into the music budget as they did for Batman the Animated Series, so you take that with what it is. With that said, you do get two very cool themes. I'll let you talk about the main theme that is in the episode that we both enjoyed, but the one that I enjoyed was you don't get a ton of Batman in it, but the Batman's first appearance in this futuristic world where Vandal Savage takes over, we do get a little bit of Shirley Walker.
Just a touch.
It's a touch of it, and it's very subtle, but he shows up and you get a little bit of the Batman the Animated Series theme, which is awesome. Big fan of that.
Oh yeah.
So I'll let you go ahead and talk about the main theme. As far as I'm concerned, the most memorable theme throughout the show, which was
I definitely want to talk about the Blackhawks theme, which hopefully the listeners are hearing right now. It's tremendous. To me, it's one of the best pieces of music on any of these shows ever. One of the best themes.
It's strong.
It's really, really good, and it's so heroic, and it especially fits like the World War II fighter pilot superhero.
Sure.
Like, it really fits for the time too. It's so perfect, and those scenes that it plays in feels just a little bit more epic with that theme playing in it. It's just a tremendous piece of music. Like I said, some of the best music I think we've heard on any of these shows.
I think that's fair.
Also, Vandal Savage's theme, which doesn't play a lot, has a very... it reminds me a little bit of like the Darth Sidious theme. It's like very like low key, like very light, but very played in like a very minor key, very sinister. As when we first meet him, and then when he's interrogating the Martian Manhunter in part 1, it's real ominous, and we don't get the full origin story in this one of who Vandal Savage is, and the meteor and the caveman stuff that comes later on. But there's a little bit of alluding to that, and he's also showing him, footage, like war footage of. There's some imagery of people giving the Sieg Heil to Hitler, and some real weird stuff. And the music is very sinister and very like I said, it felt very Star Wars to me. There's a few things in here that feel very Star Wars to me, actually.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's I think it's strong. I think that, with that said, the music plays an important role in this episode, and it is the Blackhawk theme that sort of dominates as far as memorability. Is that a word? Memorability? I don't think that's a word. As far as being memorable. But I think the rest of the episode, the music, like I said, it falls flat in the beginning. There's a little bit of a pickup in the second and third parts, which I think balances it out. So I gave music a 7 out of 10.
And I gave music a 10 out of 10.
Nice.
Like I said, that Blackhawk theme especially is just such a beautiful piece of music. And for the other reasons we mentioned, some of the music in the quieter scenes between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, I think, is really nice as well. But to me, it's one of the... we've talked about that a lot, I think, with Justice League, is a lot of episodes, the music tends to sort of fade more into the background or be sort of like generic sort of fight music, and we don't get a ton of that in here. A lot of the scenes are punctuated by, I think, pretty solid, memorable music, with the standouts being what we've already touched on here. So yeah, for those reasons, I had to give this one a 10.
There you go. All right, well, then let's head to our final. We'll give ourselves plenty of time because there's so many people here.
Oh my goodness, you aren't kidding.
So here's the interesting thing. And we'll get into our voice acting here. We'll let you talk about the players. But when I was trying to figure out the score here, it's funny because I think the major lifting here is done by people that aren't regulars on the show.
Yeah.
You have a lot of Steve Trevor, you have a lot of Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, you have a lot of Vandal Savage, you have a lot of Vandal Savage's guys. I mean, you have your regulars of Green Lantern and Hawkgirl and Flash and Superman and Wonder Woman as well, of course. But I think a lot of it is dominated by these supporting characters. So that sort of influenced my score. But let's talk about who some of those characters are.
Yeah, well, obviously, in addition to all the regulars, we have Phil Morris as Vandal Savage. Does a really, really good job. You might know him from he played speaking of crossovers, the Martian Manhunter on Smallville as a live-action version of John Jones. Sort of is like in the later seasons, is sort of introduced.
Did not remember him being on Smallville.
Introduced as sort of like a mentor to Clark, and became a pretty interesting part of that show towards the end. Mm-hmm. And he's also, for a more recent tie-in, he's on the Doom Patrol show, which is on the DC Universe streaming service that's on right now. He's playing Silas Stone, Cyborg's dad, on that show. So. He's been around. He's been around for a while. Lots of work there, and I think he does a tremendous job as Vandal Savage. As you mentioned, he's doing almost more talking than anybody else in this episode. In these 3 episodes, so that's a lot to ask of a guest star.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Yeah. So going forward, we have Patrick Duffy, who was on Step by Step. He was also on Dallas. He played Steve Trevor. He's very good as well. I really enjoyed him.
Yeah, he's perfectly cast, I think.
Yeah, it's really we've done a little bit of like flirting, I think, by now between Batman and Wonder Woman, but this is really the first like prolonged interaction, like romantic interaction Wonder Woman has had with a man. I assume in her entire life. So like playing that, but they didn't go like too much into like the awkwardness or the comedy of it. They treated this very seriously. And Steve Trevor is sort of this guy he's a spy. He's trying to figure out how to get to break this code so that he can figure out when this invasion is supposed to happen. But he has a very cavalier attitude about it. He's very sort of suave, and we noted when we saw him that he's wearing a business suit basically the whole time, which is kind of weird for like a spy and a soldier. But
1940s,
yeah,
and 50s.
Yeah, that's another thing. It kind of felt like he's sort of like an American James Bond type or something. Yeah. Like very, very suave and very, very down to earth. Like while they're sitting in this like wrecked home waiting for Trevor's contact, and he's just like digging through the fridge, finding caviar and champagne. And yeah, I thought he did a very good job as well. We also have Robert Picardo as Blackhawk, the main Blackhawk leader. Does a solid job. He was most famously probably on Star Trek Voyager.
Okay.
And then rounding out the big guest stars, we have Ted Levine from Monk, who played the Bulldozer, one of the members of Easy Company, who has a kind of a scuffle with Jon Stewart when they first meet. Okay. And then we had Fred Dreyer as Sergeant Rock, who does a good job. And most interestingly, in addition to being an actor for several years, he was a defensive end in the National Football League. Played for the Giants and had 104 career sacks. So he wasn't just like a guy who played for a year and then washed out. He was a good defensive end in the 60s and 70s.
That's crazy.
And then went on to become an actor years later. So I thought that was a really cool little story.
That's why we read these IMDb
pages. Yeah, you actually find some very interesting notes about certain people. But yeah, I thought, as we mentioned, outside of the guest cast, the 2 main casts who I feel have the most to do are Phil LaMarr as Green Lantern and Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman, and I think they're both very good here.
I agree. I think Phil LaMarr does a great job, especially after the ring goes out of juice, which they don't exactly... That was another plot hole that I didn't mention, but they don't exactly explain why his ring runs out and he doesn't just recharge it, but that's backed into plot, sorry. But yeah, he does a good job, and I think Susan Eisenberg does a great job as well. My one complaint in this episode was listening to Maria Canales as Hawk Girl. I feel like her performance, I don't know if it's just her delivery style, but there's a part in this episode where she's explaining to Flash where Green Lantern is. Flash asks her where GL is, and Michael Rosenbaum does an excellent job of just communicating the angst and the worry and the stress and the heartbreak of hearing that she had to leave Green Lantern behind. Yeah. And the conversation, she sounds very wooden in her performance, and he's very passionate and very clearly upset, and he comes across as authentic, she comes across as somebody that's sort of just reading through lines, and it was just it's just not, it wasn't her best performance.
Yeah.
Another issue that I had, and I couldn't figure out if I liked or disliked his performance, and I think some of it is just the way that he gave, like, I guess some of the lines he was given, but I thought Vandal Savage's performance was, I don't know, I don't think I liked it.
Okay.
I think it was just, it's very monotone, and I think he's just supposed to be a cool, calm, and collected type villain, like a cocky, like, he talks at the very, very end where Green Lantern or, John points a gun at him. He knows he's immortal. He's not going to die from being shot. But that, I don't think he translates. It translates well in that scene, but I think everything else, it translates. It's just he's sort of aloof, or doesn't really care about what's going on. Doesn't come across that he's this dictator that's trying to take over the world.
And some of that actually is explored in the episode where they sort of talk about how he's so the other Nazi generals are sort of talking about how he's so dismissive and sort of holier than thou towards them, whereas the other guy, who might have been a little crazy, but at least he respected say what you will about Adolf Hitler, but all right, cut that from the episode, please.
Definitely going to.
Say what you will about Hitler, but I think that was part of the character, was that it's this guy who's seen everything throughout history and feels that nobody can touch him, nobody can stop him once he's figured out how to move forward.
I think it's hard, and maybe it's to his detriment that you have so many iconic villains in the DCAU. You have, and especially the big baddie threats. Like, I'm not talking about the Joker, who obviously is iconic, but he's not a world-ending threat.
No,
you have your dark sides. Michael Ironside's dark side is he comes across, he also is cool, calm, and collected, but he comes across as sinister. He comes across as a threat. He comes across as somebody who just knows. Like, I don't know. I think it's just the way performance.
I see what you're saying.
And you compare that to the Mongols, or the I'm trying to think, even the Gorilla Grods or Luthor, or some of the more sinister villains, and it just doesn't. It just didn't ring true with me. So I ended up giving voice acting a 7 out of 10 for this.
Yeah, I went a little stronger. I went 9 out of 10. I do agree with you that this is not Maria Kanellis' best episode. And, we know that she has good performances in her. I think about, Wild Cards, or certainly in Star-Crossed.
Yep.
So we know, she has the ability, but I do agree that it just felt like it was two different. I don't know, maybe if the lines weren't recorded on the same day or something.
Could have been.
Where it's like Rosenbaum is so good in that one scene that you mentioned, and she is very sort of more matter of factly saying, "Well, this is what I had to do because this is war." And it's one of those scenes where it could have been one of the all-time great scenes, maybe.
Yeah.
If her performance had been a little stronger there, but. Mostly a minor complaint for me. Like I said, 9 out of 10. I thought everyone else was really on point here. Even some of the, like I said, Kevin Conroy doesn't have a big role to play. George Newbern as Superman has a very small role to play. I liked the scene between Martian Manhunter and Vandal Savage, where Vandal Savage is sort of explaining his evil plan to him. I thought there was some good back and forth there. I thought Carl Lumbly did a nice job with that. But yeah, overall, of the Justice League episodes we watched, and I think that'll reflect in our final score, this is definitely one of the best we've watched so far, and probably my personal favorite that we've watched so far as Justice League goes.
It's really strong. It's no Legends. I'm not gonna put this in front of Legends.
Are we gonna have a disagreement a lot for that?
Maybe if I feel like editing it in.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well. Okay. The only thing that we didn't get, we're getting ready to get wrapped up and get our final score. So the only thing I didn't mention, and this didn't factor into my plot, because I gave plot a perfect score.
Right.
But can we talk about what a wuss Superman was in this episode?
God.
Man, every time you turn around, he's getting knocked down, he's getting shot, he's on his knees because he got hit with a bullet. Mm-hmm. He is borderline useless in this episode.
I mean, that's sort of a running gag in season 1 of Justice League. Is I remember hearing Bruce Timm talk about that of it's Super Wimp season. Like
Jeez.
A lot of episodes where he is incapacitated very easily. And I get that that's sort of a crutch to pump up your villains.
And
to be like, if they're so tough that they can break down Superman so easily, they must be really bad. Like, I get it.
Plus, we talked about if Superman is invulnerable and can do everything himself, why do we need the rest of the Justice League?
Sometimes you could say the same thing with Flash a lot of times, where he's getting knocked around. It's like,
sure.
How is he not how is he moving slow enough for anyone to ever touch him? Like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's some stuff you just have to accept because it's a Justice League show and not a Superman show. But
at the same time, though, man.
Yeah, they went a little overboard with that.
It was a little much. Anyway, all right.
But yeah, that's fair to mention.
So that brings us to our final scores. And what's totaling up mine here, let's see, we have a final score of 31 out of 40, which is obviously, that's a solid B+, maybe an A- there. We're above 30, which is always a good sign. Really, really strong episode. What about you?
And yeah, my final score is a little bit stronger. They're at 37 out of 40.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's upper echelon for you, man.
Yeah. No, this to me is one of the best episodes of any of the shows we've watched so far. Like I said, it's my personal favorite episode of Justice League we've reviewed so far.
There you go. You're wrong, but
okay. But to me, yeah, it's in that upper echelon, one of the best stories. And again, it's a lot they had to pack into it. And the fact that it's done so well, that the visuals are so compelling, that the music is so good, like this really feels like all 4 of the categories that we rated on were really everyone was on their A game here. It felt like, and I think my score reflects that.
So I would venture to say, if we're talking about rewatchability, This is a must see.
Definitely agree. Just for no other reason than just how good it is as a standalone thing, as you mentioned last week. Maybe one of the more memorable episodes of any of the shows, but yeah, and also there's some cool character stuff. You get to see how Green Lantern has to act without his ring on him. You get a little bit more of the, like I said, the Hawk Girl Green Lantern stuff. You get a little more character development for Wonder Woman in this episode. So
sure.
It feels like our heroes aren't in the same place that they were at the start of this adventure, and that's really what you want to ask for when you do a big epic story like this. Is that our heroes are different. They've been changed by this adventure, and it does feel like they have been by the end. And just the sweet little ending is, we get all these big moments and epic things and battles, and the final scene is just Wonder Woman going to visit Steve in the nursing home, and they just sort of sit together and watch the sunset. It's like a really peaceful, nice little bow on this episode, too.
Absolutely. Well put, Liam. Very succinct. All right. Well, that'll about wrap us up. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, coming up next week, we are so incredibly excited about this. We mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we have the Justice League versus the Fatal 5 review we're going to be doing the day that this movie premieres. It's going to be released a little bit later than our normal 10/9 Central. Still be released on that Saturday. We're super excited about it, though, so look out for that. Follow us on Twitter at DCAU Review. But that will be premiering next Saturday. Look for it right here at DCAUreview.com. And, of course, streaming on iTunes and on Google Podcasts as well. Super excited about that, Liam.
Absolutely. It's, again, our first... We had the much beloved Batman and Harley Quinn movie a couple years ago, but since then we haven't gotten a full on DCAU project in a while. You've got all the a lot of the original voice cast is back. You've got some new characters that we've never seen in the DCAU before. I think it's going to be I'm very excited for this. I think it's a recipe for a really fun time.
I'm excited, but also I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be focused from the initial featurettes. It's focused a lot on your Green Lantern and your Jessica Cruz Green Lantern, and then who's the Legionnaires?
Starboy.
The Starboy. Okay, so we'll see. We'll see. Yes, I'm excited because it's DCAU. or returning there. But we'll see. We'll see whether or not it passes the initial excitement phase and whether or not we really enjoy it. But check that out. That's going to be coming up this Saturday, streaming at DCAUreview.com. Check out our Twitter at DCAU Review for all the updates regarding when the episode is released. Give us your thoughts on this week's episode, A Savage Time, and also we'd love to hear about your excitement, your thoughts on the upcoming episode or the upcoming movie of the Justice League versus the Fatal Five. What are your thoughts? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are your expectations a little bit dampened because of the Batman Harley Quinn movie?
Which one of the musical numbers in Batman and Harley Quinn was your favorite?
I actually, for what it was, I actually liked that.
No, it's fine.
But anyway, all right, that's a story for
that's
another
a review for another time.
Exactly. With that said, I'm Cal,
and I'm Liam,
and we will talk to you next week on the DCAU Review.
Bye bye.